Daniel? Who is this woman and why is she answering your phone at 11 p.m.? There was a long, deafening silence on the other end of the line. Hello, I can hear you breathing, I pressed, my heart racing. I'm sorry, who's calling? A woman finally answered, her voice deliberately casual. This is Rebecca, Daniel's wife. Another silence, shorter this time. Oh, I didn't realize he was married. My name is Rebecca, 34 years old, and I work as a financial analyst. Daniel and I have been married for 3 years, and I thought we had built a solid life together. We met at a charity fundraiser, dated for 18 months, and had what I considered a beautiful wedding with friends and family. We bought our townhouse a year later, and everything seemed to be progressing exactly as planned. I never would have discovered Daniel's betrayal if it weren't for a simple mistake, dialing his number from my office phone instead of my cell. It had been an exhausting day at work. I was closing a major account, and the client had requested last-minute changes to the proposal. By the time I finished, it was nearly 11 p.m., and I was one of the last people in the office. I reached for my cell phone to call Daniel and let him know I was finally heading home, only to discover the battery had died. Sighing, I picked up my office phone and dialed his number from memory. When a woman answered, I initially thought I had misdialed. But then I clearly heard Daniel's voice in the background saying, "Who is it?" That's when I asked the question that would change everything. Daniel? Who is this woman and why is she answering your phone at 11 p.m.? After the woman's reluctant admission that she didn't know Daniel was married, I heard a scuffle, and then Daniel's voice came on the line. Rebecca? What? Why are you calling from this number? My phone died. I replied coolly, surprised by how calm I sounded despite the hurricane forming inside me. More importantly, who just answered your phone? That's just Melissa from work. We're finishing up a project and... At your apartment? At 11 p.m. My voice remained steady, but my hand gripped the office phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. It's not what you think, he stammered. I think it's exactly what I think, I said. Don't bother coming up with more lies. I'll be home in 30 minutes. I suggest your guest leaves before I arrive. I hung up the phone and sat motionless at my desk. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of building a life with someone I thought I knew, 3 years erased in a single phone call. When I arrived home, Daniel was pacing in our living room. The apartment smelled faintly of an unfamiliar perfume. Rebecca, I can explain, he began as soon as I walked through the door. Please do, I said, setting my briefcase down and crossing my arms. What followed was a convoluted story about a work emergency, how Melissa was a new team member who needed guidance on a presentation, and how they had simply lost track of time. So you brought her to our home instead of staying at the office because, I asked. The cleaning crew came and we had to leave. Look, I know it looks bad, but nothing happened. I stared at him for a long moment. Daniel, there's a wine glass with lipstick on it in the sink. I don't wear that shade. His face paled. He'd missed that detail in his hasty cleanup. Who is she really? I asked. After more denials and circular explanations, I finally said, I'm too tired for this tonight. I'm sleeping in the guest room. We'll talk tomorrow. I needed time to think to plan my next steps. I wasn't going to make any rash decisions while emotional. The next day, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. After Daniel left for the office, with a worried backward glance, I began my investigation. I had never been the type to snoop through my husband's things, believing that trust was fundamental to a healthy marriage, but that trust had clearly been misplaced. His laptop was password protected, but I knew all his usual combinations. On my third attempt, our wedding date, I was in. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Emails between Daniel and Melissa going back 6 months. Dinner reservations. Hotel confirmations. Sweet nothings that made my stomach turn. Melissa wasn't from work. She was a woman he'd met at a conference in San Diego half a year ago. They had been carrying on their affair ever since, sometimes even when I was traveling for business. I forwarded the most incriminating emails to myself, took screenshots, and logged out. Then I called my older sister, Caroline. I need a lawyer, I told her after explaining the situation. Caroline, who had gone through a divorce 5 years earlier, gave me the name of her attorney. And you need a place to stay, she added. Come to my house. You shouldn't be alone right now. I'm not leaving my home, I responded firmly. If anyone should leave, it's Daniel. Caroline didn't argue, knowing my stubborn nature. Instead, she offered to come over that evening for moral support when I confronted Daniel again. When Daniel returned from work, he found not only me waiting but also Caroline. His face fell when he saw her. "What is this?" he asked cautiously. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "I know about Melissa. The real Melissa, not your made-up coworker. Rebecca." I held up my hand to silence him. "I've seen the emails, Daniel. I know about San Diego. I know about the Hilton downtown 3 weeks ago when I was in Chicago. I know everything." The color drained from his face as I placed printouts of the emails on the coffee table between us. "How could you?" I asked, my voice finally breaking. "How could you do this to us?" He buried his face in his hands. "I don't know," he whispered. "It just happened." "Affairs don't just happen," Caroline interjected sharply. "They're a series of deliberate choices." Daniel glared at her. "This is between me and my wife." "Your wife who you've been cheating on for half a year," Caroline shot back. I laid a hand on my sister's arm. "It's okay. Daniel, I want you to leave. Tonight. Go to a hotel, go to Melissa's. I don't care. But I need space to think." "You're kicking me out of my own house?" he asked incredulously. "Our house," I corrected, "and yes, I am. Unless you prefer, I leave and take half of everything we own with me right now." After more protests and attempts to make me reconsider, Daniel finally packed a bag and left. As the door closed behind him, I collapsed onto the couch, the full weight of the situation finally hitting me. Caroline wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "You did the right thing. Now we plan your next steps." The next few days were a blur of legal consultations, financial assessments, and emotional breakdowns. Daniel called and texted incessantly, alternating between apologies, explanations, and accusations that I was overreacting. I blocked his number and communicated only through my lawyer. I learned that in our state, adultery could impact divorce proceedings, which was why documenting the evidence had been so important. A week after the discovery, I received a surprise visit at my office from a woman I had never met but immediately recognized from her social media pictures, Melissa. "Mrs. Peterson," my assistant announced nervously, "there's a Melissa Crawford here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's insisting it's urgent." I could have refused to see her, but curiosity got the better of me. "Send her in, Jenny, and please stay close by." Melissa entered my office with the hesitant steps of someone approaching a wild animal. She was younger than me, maybe 28, and dressed impeccably in a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, remaining standing even after I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. "What can I do for you, Melissa?" I asked, my tone professional, as if she were any other visitor. "I came to apologize," she said. "I truly didn't know Daniel was married until your call that night. He told me he was divorced." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "And you believed him without ever seeing where he lived? Without meeting any of his friends or family? Without ever questioning why you could only see him on certain days and at certain times?" She flinched at each question. "I know how it sounds. I was stupid." "Not stupid," I corrected. "Willfully ignorant, perhaps. There's a difference." Melissa bit her lip. "There's something else you should know. Daniel's been seeing someone besides me, a woman named Vanessa. I found out just last month, but I was too—" She trailed off. "Too in love with him to walk away?" I finished for her. She nodded miserably. "Do you have proof of this other relationship?" I asked, my analytical mind immediately seeing the legal advantages. "Yes," she said, reaching into her designer handbag and pulling out a USB drive. "Text messages, photos. I was going to confront him with them, but then your call happened and everything exploded." I accepted the drive, my mind racing. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because you deserve to know everything," she said, "and because I want to make amends somehow." After she left, I examined the contents of the drive with my lawyer present. Melissa hadn't lied. Daniel had been juggling not 2 women but 3, including his wife. The evidence was damning and would prove invaluable in the divorce proceedings. 3 months later, I sat in my lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers. The terms were heavily in my favor. I kept the townhouse, received a significant portion of our joint assets, and Daniel was responsible for my legal fees. He caved quickly once we presented all the evidence, my lawyer commented as I signed the last page. Most cheaters do when they realize they can't talk their way out. I nodded, feeling a complex mixture of sadness, relief, and determination. What about the other women? Did he end up with either of them? My lawyer shook her head. From what I understand, Melissa left him after meeting with you, and this Vanessa person disappeared when the affair became public. He's alone. Good, I said simply. The weeks following the finalization of my divorce were difficult but healing. I threw myself into work, accepted a promotion I had previously hesitated on because Daniel thought it would take too much time away from home, and began redecorating the townhouse to erase his presence. Caroline convinced me to join her for weekly yoga classes, something I had always dismissed as not for me. To my surprise, I found the physical exertion and mindfulness practice therapeutic. 6 months after that fateful late-night phone call, I received an email from Daniel. It was long and rambling, full of apologies and explanations about how he had been going through a personal crisis and never meant to hurt me. I read it once, then deleted it without responding. His crisis had become my opportunity to rediscover myself, to build a stronger foundation, and to recognize that I deserved better. 1 year after the divorce, I sold the townhouse. Despite the favorable terms of the divorce, there were too many memories there, both good and bad. I bought a modern apartment in a different part of the city, one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the park. On the day I moved in, Caroline helped me arrange my furniture and hang artwork. As we shared a bottle of wine on my new balcony, she asked, "Do you ever regret it?" Finding out about Daniel, I considered the question seriously. No, I finally answered. I regret the years I spent with someone who didn't value our vows. But I don't regret discovering the truth, however painful it was. To truth then, Caroline said, raising her glass. And to new beginnings, I added, clinking my glass against hers. The unexpected call from my office phone had shattered the life I thought I had. But from those broken pieces, I had built something new, something stronger, something truly mine. And for that, ironically, I had Daniel to thank. 2 years after my divorce, I was waiting for a table at a new restaurant downtown when someone called my name. I turned to see Melissa, looking very different from our last encounter. Gone was the designer outfit, replaced by casual jeans and a simple blouse. "Rebecca," she said hesitantly, "I wasn't sure you'd remember me." "I have a good memory," I replied neutrally. She nodded, understanding the unspoken meaning. "I'm in town visiting family and thought I recognized you. I just wanted to say," she paused, gathering her thoughts. "Thank you, in a way. Our conversation that day in your office was a wake-up call. I've made some big changes." "I'm glad to hear that," I said, and meant it. Are you doing okay?" she asked. I smiled, genuinely this time. Better than okay. My table was called then, saving us from further awkward conversation. As I followed the host to my seat, I realized I felt no anger toward Melissa anymore. She had been another victim of Daniel's deceptions, albeit a less innocent one than I had been. That evening, I updated my online dating profile for the first time in months. I had been hesitant to re-enter the dating world, fearful of being hurt again. But my chance encounter with Melissa had shown me something important. I had healed. The wound Daniel inflicted had scared over, and while it would always be part of my story, it no longer defined me. The next day, I received a message from a man named Thomas, a civil engineer whose profile spoke of honesty, communication, and building strong foundations, literally and figuratively. His message was thoughtful, referencing specific points from my profile, rather than sending a generic greeting. I smiled as I typed my response, not knowing where this might lead but open to the possibility of something new. The unexpected phone call 2 years ago had changed everything, but perhaps that change, painful as it was, had been necessary to bring me where I needed to be. Sometimes, the worst moments of our lives become the doorways to something better. All we need is the courage to step through them.